Peace is not passiveness. Peace is not inactivity. Peace is justice. Peace is certain harmony which emerges from justice that prevails within and the outside world. Actually, for disruption of peace, there are many reasons. Socio-economic reasons are probably primary reasons, and there could be psychological reasons. And UNO also, I think, has mentioned in its manifesto. Wars are primarily born in the minds of human beings. Because wars, conflict, violence, all these are primarily born in human mind, we also need to uh, build the bridges of peace in human mind. So all philosophers have tried to interpret the world, but the point is to change it. I would always argue that the corporate sector should appoint all these artists as permanent employees in their organization so that artists can perform. Artists can also add certain aesthetic value to the corporate sector so that jobs are also created for artists, for singers, dancers, for painters, for writers. Art will also achieve certain kind of recognition by the education system at large. Be the change you intend to see in the world. In terms of ecosophy, aesthetics, and peace, which I have described as air, water, and sunshine. We will also try to reform our own life, the way we live. Let's not contribute more to global warming. Let's also consume less. Let's also reuse, recycle, renew, renovate, and we will try to have a peaceful coexistence with society at large.
Peace is not a distant dream, it is painted in the colors we choose, sung in the stories we tell, and rooted in how we live with the earth. To experience art, to honor the earth, and to nurture peace, perhaps these are all the same act. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Human Weave Season 3. In this season, Phases of Peace, we are exploring the many ways peace reveals itself in our lives, in our communities, and the world.
In today's episode, we explore art and creativity as a profound pathways to peace. Through ecosophy and Gandhian philosophy, we reflect on how art inspires empathy, ethical action, and harmony. Across history, creativity has healed wounds, bridged divides, and reminded us of our shared humanity. Whether through a song that calms the heart, a painting that stirs compassion, or a community joined in theater or dance. At the same time, creativity is deeply personal. In the stillness of writing, painting, or shaping with our hands, we discover peace not only as a social ideal, but as an inner state we can nurture.
In this conversation, we also bring the idea of ecosophy, ecological wisdom. Ecosophy asks us to see peace as something larger than just human relations. It calls us to live in harmony with the earth itself, recognizing that the well being of people, communities, and nature are inseparable. Today, we are joined by Professor Dr. Varadesh Hiregange, a senior academic with background in journalism, having worked with the Times of India and Deccan Herald. He's a founding director of the Gandhian Center for Philosophical Arts and Sciences at Mahe and the former director of Manipal Institute of Communication. I've had the privilege of learning under him when he was a professor at MIC, and over the past 20 years, he has not only been my mentor and guide, but also a friend and father figure. His work spans environmentalism, philosophy, peace studies, media, literature, and the arts, and his recent research focuses on the philosophy of education. We are honored to have him with us today to guide us into this rich exploration of art, creativity, philosophy, and the spirit of peace. A warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshan and Yashaswini.
So, what does world peace mean to you on a personal level? What image does that bring to you?
Let me first congratulate both of you, Roshni and Yashaswini, on your this very valuable endeavor and the themes which you have been discussing, be it peace, be it ecosophy, be it aesthetics. So I always combine all these three together. These are so ecosophy, aesthetics, and peace are as important to us as air, water, and sunshine. And your effort to bring these three core values of life to the forefront in our contemporary era is something extremely valuable. So, on this count, I would congratulate both of you. What comes to my mind when you ask me about peace? So, in one phrase, I would put it as Sarvodaya. And Sarvodaya is, of course, a Gandhian value, Gandhian concept. It is the core Gandhian value in his philosophy. And Sarvodaya is well-being of everyone. Everyone, of course, living and non-living, being and non-being. So it also, of course, it includes all human beings, undoubtedly cutting across region, religion, caste, community, nation. It cuts across all the barriers. At the same time, it not only includes all the living beings, of course, the plants and the animals, but also the rivers and the mountains and the rocks and the soil. And so, in that sense, it is complete nature itself. So, Sarvodaya is well being of everyone. So, when you mention peace, one needs to discover one's own peace in one's own mind. That is true. It could be very individualistic peace. Yes, one may be deriving peace by many activities, helping others. One may derive peace by including the pains and pleasures of others around oneself. So, peace has different dimensions. One, of course, is the individual dimension, and the other one, of course, is the social dimension. So I would always say that peace is more valuable when your self is also included in the social self. When your self also becomes a social self. One could also be satisfied sitting at home doing whatever that is necessary for one's livelihood. That's also very valuable so long as one doesn't disturb somebody else, one doesn't get into any other violent activities outside. That's also very valuable, undoubtedly. But at the same time, when one expands oneself and also makes it much broader to include every being and every non-being. So that is the notion of Sarvodaya, as I mentioned. So I think that would be much more valuable piece. But it is not such an easy process. It is not such an easy process. Possibly one could be doing, let's say, yoga and trying to achieve certain balance of mind, and one may have certain kind of internal peace. But if you start expanding yourself, and when you start including all other selves in yourself, then of course your peace is constantly disturbed. In the sense, there is so much misery outside, so much violence outside, conflict outside, and yes, wars. And so that can always disturb you. So in such case, peace almost becomes a remote possibility because it's not absolutely an ideal world where there is no violence, where there is perfect harmony, where there is absolutely no conflict and absolute socio-economic equality. So that world is not anywhere near the corner. So it's quite a distant dream. A pleasure. There is always certain value in dreaming such a noble dream. It is necessary. And that dream is very, very valuable dream. But that can also be very disturbing dream. So then how do you achieve this? How do you rather reconcile between these two conflicting tendencies? Individually, yes, one can rather ignore what happens in the outside world and try to have certain kind of internal peace. That is fine. But when you start taking into account what is happening around you, then it starts disturbing you. Then how do you achieve that peace? Here, possibly one needs to resolve this crisis within oneself. We need to work towards this broader ideal with certain equanimity of mind, which is very difficult. What I'm saying, even I can't say that I have achieved it, but it is only an effort. One needs to make an effort to have, or rather to achieve, certain kind of peace outside, in every walk of life, in international arena, in our domestic front. At the same time, we also need to have certain equanimity of mind within, which is a very difficult process. I think one needs to struggle for it. Yeah.
So thank you for bringing the concept of Sarvodaya here. I
Yeah.
think it's very integral to what we see our podcast also, the human weave. Even the name means that we weave into everything, not just human beings, but everything in our universe in a way. And uh, we are trying to bring this connection that you were talking about also in different kinds of peace through this season. We are trying to focus on various aspects of peace. So how can we as individuals focus on the inner peace and then go outwards, reaching it at a global level? And it's a practice, like you said. It's not that we reach a destination and we have reached there but definitely it's a process, and it's a path that we are walking on a daily basis. I'm just curious to know, was there a particular artwork, poem, song, or anything that influenced your understanding of harmony or justice when you were younger?
Uh, Actually, um, I grew up in a place called Dharwad, even though I was born in another place called Gokarna, a temple town. And Dharwad, incidentally, even today, is considered to be an educational town because it has many colleges and universities. And for a long time, it has been known as some kind of an educational town. At the same time, it is also considered to be rather a cultural city where music, literature, different kinds of other arts are very rich, and they are being practiced for many, many years. It has a rich tradition of art and culture, rich tradition of literature, music. Many very well-known writers, Jnanapith awardees, and very accomplished writers such as Dara Bendre, V.K. Gokak, Girish Karnad. So they have rather lived there. And at the same time, they've rather contributed very valuable literature to the world itself. At the same time, music is also very rich. It has a very rich tradition of Hindustani music. Of course, all other kinds of music as well, folk, Carnatic, but primarily Hindustani music. So major musicians such as Bhimsen Joshi, then Pandit Mallikarjun Mansoor, Gangubai Hangal, Basuraj Rajguru. So many of them were rather associated with this place called Dharwad. And these memories are very, very alive in my mind, my growing up years, my childhood, my youthhood. So very, very rich. And Generally, artists, there could be exceptions, artists who aspire for violence, there could be exceptions, but generally, artists, writers, the painters, musicians, all of them, generally, they are also peace loving people. They aspire for peace, so they are also generally disturbed by what happens outside. They respond. Many of them also do respond to the contemporary times, and Dharwad has such a tradition as well. Many social movements one could also witness in Dharwad. So it could be students movement, it could be farmers movement, it could be language movement. Even today, it is the epicenter of many such movements. And I grew up in that place, listening to the poetry of many great poets, including Dara Bendre, writings of great writers, listening to great musicians, listening to their messages, and all these, in fact, have certainly influenced me. I should also mention a novel by another veteran writer, Shivram Karanth. He's a very well-known novel, which has also been made into a film, Chomana Dudi, Choma's Drum. Even today, something that really moved me from inside, something that really disturbed me, something which also had some kind of a transformational effect, some kind of a very humanizing effect. So what happens in the novel is primarily a landless laborer coming from the marginalized rather sections and aspiring to have a piece of land to own and to plow. And our socio economic political circumstances were such at that time, and even now, I don't say it is much better, but at least, yes, we have advanced to an extent. But he was not able to finally realize his dream of owning a piece of. So that was very, very transformational. And later, of course, Professor U.R. Anantmurthy's writings have influenced me a lot, and some kind of a some balance within, and trying to rather remove the imbalance outside. So I have learned
Yeah.
from incidentally, probably Mahatma Gandhi was very well introduced to me by Professor U.R. Anantmurthy. One of his articles, when I read, it was so influential, and that also had a very transformational effect. And one of his poems, which also even today I remember again and again, that is ಜೈಲಿಂದ ವರವರ್ ರಾವ್ಗೆ ಬರೆದ ಕವನ ಓದಿ ಹಲವು ಹೋರಾಟಗಳ ಕಲಿ ಇನ್ನು ಕಲಿಯುತ್ತಿರುವೆ ಹಲವು ಹೋರಾಟಗಳ ಕಲಿ ಇನ್ನು ಕಲಿಯುತ್ತಿರುವೆ ವಿಫಲ ವಿಪ್ಲವದ ಜೈಲೇ ನಿನಗೆ ಸಸ್ಯ ಕಾಶಿಯಾಗಿ ಗಿಡಮರ ಬಳ್ಳಿಗಳ. So that's how it continues. I briefly translate one or two sentences, and it continues later. So ಒದ್ದೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿಗೆಯ ಹೊಗೆ ತುಂಬಿದ ಚರಿತ್ರೆಯ ಅಗ್ನಿ ದಿವ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಊದುಗೊಳವೆಯಾಗಬೇಕೆಂದು ಎಂದುಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದ ನೀನು ಇಂದು ಬಿಸಿಲಿಗೆ ಇಬ್ಬನಿಗೆ ಶಾಶ್ವತಿಯ ಋತು ಕ್ರಾಂತಿಗೆ ಬೀಜ ಬಿತ್ತಿರುವೆ. The first line, something which I always is ಹಲವು ಹೋರಾಟಗಳ ಕಲಿ ಇನ್ನು ಕಲಿಯುತ್ತಿರುವೆ. So you are the warrior of many battles, but you are still learning every day. So that's what Anantmurthy tells another revolutionary poet, Varavar Rao, in his poem. ಹಲವು ಹೋರಾಟಗಳ ಕಲಿ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕಲಿಯುತ್ತಿರುವೆ, ಶಾಶ್ವತದ ಋತುಕ್ರಾಂತಿಗೆ ಬೀಜ ಬಿತ್ತಿರುವೆ. So it is a constant learning. So we can't say that, yes, I have achieved my perfect peace and now I just need to make an effort to achieve perfect peace outside. No, it is a constant learning. Every day, every moment, one has to make that effort. So how do you change myself and how do I change the world? So this is a constant process.
I could understand certain words of
Yeah,
the Kannada poem that you expressed, but the emotion was, I think, coming through very clearly. And I think most of us, in some way, like even if people don't read poetry, I think something or the other in art has touched us. Something has made us stop in our way and think, and that happens across language, any kind of barriers, which in a way, like when we are talking about the global sense also, um, kind of extends our I can say an example, like I hadn't visited many countries before. I have lived in India, and the first 25 30 years I've in the same country. I'd never gone outside, but through books I could understand the plight or the situations that were prevalent in other cultures, countries, and kind of live the pain that they were going through those books or through those movies. And it's a beautiful way to kind of understand somebody we don't really see.
yeah. So all of us have heard this famous poem by Narasim Mehta, which was also Gandhiji's favorite. That is, Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahiyaje, Pida Parai Janene. That's how it continues. This has been translated into all languages. This is basically in Gujarati, medieval Gujarati. But when you understand this, something that you mentioned just now, its essence is the same. In Kannada, there is a very fine translation by another very important poet of our generation, Jayant Kaikini, who has translated this Vaishnava Janato to Kannada. And the first line, I will translate it into English later. ಎಲ್ಲರ ನೋವನ್ನು ಬಲ್ಲವನಾದರೆ ಗೆಲ್ಲುವೆ ನೀನು ಬಾಳಲ್ಲಿ. ಎಲ್ಲರ ನೋವನ್ನು ಬಲ್ಲವನಾದರೆ ಗೆಲ್ಲುವೆ ನೀನು ಬಾಳಲ್ಲಿ. I think that sums up the philosophy of Sarvodaya as well. Yellara novanu, when you understand the pains of others, when you express your empathy, when you become empathetic, when you understand the pains of others, you succeed in your life. Success to be defined in a different way altogether, not in terms of our conventional parameters. You achieve your peace of mind, which is finally the ultimate purpose of any human being. It needs to be. It is. Who doesn't want peace? But they do not know. How do we achieve peace? There are simpler ways of achieving peace. Simply helping others can give you abundant satisfaction. Simple acts, simple activities can give you lot of satisfaction, lot of peace. So, ಎಲ್ಲರ ನೋವನ್ನು ಬಲ್ಲವನಾದರೆ. So, when you understand the pains of others, which you mentioned just now, Roshni, that is the essence of life.
That's beautiful. I could literally get the core essence when you were translating it to English. I don't think English words will justify what it conveys in Kannada.
You asked me about a poem, possibly, which captured me completely and which has also remained with me over the years. That is Nisar Ahmad's Nadadeviye ಕಂಡೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಮಡಿಲಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಥ ದೃಶ್ಯ ನೋವು ನಗೆಯ ಸಮ್ಮಿಶ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಎದೆಯಾಯಿತದಕ್ಕೆ ವಶ್ಯ ಒಂದೆದೆಯ ಹಾಲ ಕುಡಿದವರ ನಡುವೆ ಎನಿತೊಂದು ಭೇದ ತಾಯಿ ಒಂದೆ ನೆಲದ ರಸ ಹೀರಲೇನು ಸಿಹಿ ಕಹಿಯ ರುಚಿಯ ಕಾಯಿ ಕತ್ತಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಗೆಟ್ಟು ನಡೆದಿರುವ ಹಲವು ಮಂದಿ ದುಃಖಪೂರ ಉಕ್ಕುಕ್ಕಿ ಮೊರೆಯ ಕೊಚ್ಚಿತ್ತು ಬಾಳ ದಂಡೆ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಹೌ ಇಟ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಸ್. ಸೊ ಫೈನಲಿ ನರನನ್ನೇ ದಾಳವಾಗಿಸುತ್ತ ಬಾಳ ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ನಲಿವ ನರಿಗೆ ತಾನೊಂದು ಎನ್ನುವ ಸತ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಅಡ್ಡಗಾಲೆಳೆವ ನಾಡಿ ನಡಿಗೆ ಎಚ್ಚರವ ನೀಡಿ ತಿದ್ದುತ್ತಲಿರಲಿ ಕವಿಭಾವವೆಂಬ ಬಡಿಗೆ ತಾಯೆ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಇದುವೆ ನಿನಗೆ ನಾ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಲಿರುವ ಕೊಡುಗೆ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಹೌ it completes. So it talks about the contrast of the world. So even though this motherland and mother earth, let's say, has not discriminated in that sense, mother earth has not discriminated. All of us have grown up by being fed by mother earth. We've imbibed everything from her. But what kind of a contrasting realities? Dire poverty on one side and absolute lavishness on the other side. So the usual phrase we use, the haves and the have-nots. But finally, what can a poet do? What can an artist do? So it also answers your question in that sense. So ತಾಯೆ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಇದುವೆ ನಿನಗೆ ನಾ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಲಿರುವ ಕೊಡುಗೆ. So an artist, a writer, a poet constantly responds to contemporary realities and expresses in different media, in different art forms, and somehow try to make his or her contribution to set this world right. And it is again a long process, but it is really a worthy dream.
Yeah, that's a beautiful poem, sir. I was thinking about art as a language of peace. Why do you think the creative expression resonates so deeply with our human longing for harmony?
So generally, artists crave for peace in its broadest sense as well, not just about internal peace, but also about peace outside in every walk of life. Because it is also inbuilt in the very nature of art itself. There are different art theories. Art philosophers have theorized, going back to Plato and Aristotle in particular, in the Western tradition. In India, of course, we have this whole notion of rasa theory, rasa siddhanta. So they are, to an extent, they are also closer, even though, of course, the shades become different. The notion of catharsis and notion of rasa. So catharsis is purification. It elevates our emotion. It is also a kind of expression. And rasa, of course, is very specifically, it also elevates our emotion. We all have different kinds of emotions. So we have these navarasas, Shringara, Karuna, Raudra, Hasya, Shanta. Shanta is also a rasa. Peace is also a rasa in Indian tradition, the ninth rasa. And the notion of catharsis is certain kind of purification. We went out our bottled up emotion through art and hence humanizes. Art humanizes us, and in that sense, we also aspire for peace and harmony. The very process of catharsis, according to Aristotle, finally gives us a certain kind of satisfaction, certain kind of peace, certain kind of harmony. So also Indian theorists rather discovered or identified this whole notion of Shanta rasa, that is the rasa of peace. So peace, along with Shringara, Karuna, Raudra, Abhaya, Bhayanaka, all these. So I think there is something inbuilt in the very process of art, be it music, be it literature, be it painting, be it film. We give expression to our emotion. So we have different theories. We have theory of mimesis, theory of expressionism. So we have different theories. Aestheticism. But the very act of the artistic expression, I think, has certain kind of psychological effect, which finally results in certain kind of harmony and peace. And hence today we are also experimenting with music therapy, dance therapy, art therapy in general. All these therapies, I think there is something inbuilt in the very process of art that humanizes us, which makes us aspire for harmony and peace. It is also a means to achieve harmony and peace.
Yeah. So when you're talking about it in this
Yeah,
context, like
yeah,
you talked about how these rasas have also been part of art, and
yeah.
it is what humanizes the whole concept, right? Do you think every person is inherently then creative? Because that was against, like, we always probably a few decades before onwards we have started defining, okay, creative versus logical, or creative versus rational, juxtaposition of these two concepts. But do you think every person is inherently creative, and if so, does that mean everybody has the potential to contribute to peace?
Absolutely. Every person is creative, and creativity can happen in any walk of life, in everyday life. It could be creative. And even for that matter, psychologists who have theorized on creativity have identified this. So creativity could be in science, in mathematics, it could be in other forms, it could be in economics, it could be in the way we launch our political struggles. Possibly the salt satyagraha of Mahatma Gandhi was the most creative imagination of all times. So creativity certainly need not be restricted only to painting, music, dance, cinema, literature, etc. Certainly not. Certainly. At the same time, it could be part of our everyday life. So it could be in the way we prepare our food, it could be in the way we dress, it could be in the way we speak, in the way we walk, talk. So creativity also makes our life itself more exciting. And everyone, certainly not the only ones who have certain kind of artistic temperament, but everyone is capable of being creative. But at the same time, I would also say that everyone also has certain artistic aptitude. Who doesn't like music, for instance? It need not necessarily be classical music. It need not be just Hindustani or Carnatic or Western classical. It need not be. So it could be just a film song. So I really find it very difficult to find a person who doesn't like one or the other film song. Film songs are very popular.
So I was thinking, when you say everybody is creative enough in their own ways, how do you see creativity as a form of inner discipline? Maybe that something that cultivates that patience, empathy, and resilience, something of the similar expression.
Yes, creativity is everyone's inner potential. Just that one needs to realize, and it may manifest in any form, in any walk of life. So that can happen. So creativity, at the same time, once again, I will relate it to oneself. So at the same time, one may relate it to the world outside. So one may just make use of one's creative potential to address one's own self, to make one's own life very exciting. It can manifest in any way. The way you primarily, let's say, arrange your own home, the way you organize your home could be a very satisfying creative experience for you. But creativity may also be used to address the larger and the broader problems outside, the challenges which face our world today. Climate change, global warming, socio-economic disparities. These are huge challenges. Violence, war, gender injustice. Creativity may also be used to address such challenges. What could be the innovative way? So, all our approaches so far have failed, or rather, have led us to limited success. We have not completely succeeded in eliminating, let's say, socio-economic disparities, not been able to eliminate violence, war, not been able to arrest the emission of carbon dioxide into the system, which is primarily responsible for global warming. So, what could be the creative solution for it? Yes, as an artist, one may talk about it, one may express in one's art form through one's art form. So, that can happen. So, I remember all artists getting together near Udupi at certain point of time and spending a whole day rather giving expression to the environmental problems. Excellent paintings as a form of expression. Creativity may also be extended to our research. How do we find solution to the ecological challenges? How do we bring our own carbon footprint? So how do we find alternative forms of energy? It's all part of ecosophy. How do we find alternative sources of energy? So many of these conventional sources of energy, such as the hydropower or thermal power, nuclear power, so all these have their own demerits. So, what are the alternatives? The solar energy, the wind energy. Are they also free from problems? Difficult to say. Problems associated with them also for various reasons. But how do we rather eliminate those problems creatively and rather enhance its potential to address the challenges of the day? How do we address energy crisis? By being creative in our own research. In that sense, everyone is capable of creativity, just that one also needs to expand that scope of that creativity so that it also includes all other selves along with oneself. Yeah.
So, when you're talking about this, something that comes to my mind is also how you mentioned for nuclear energy or nuclear weapons that were created, or
Yeah.
war, in a sense, has also become very creative. There are economic wars that
Destructively,
happen.
destructively creative.
Yes, and you can see it at a global level. But the same kind, and I'm thinking that in the same way now we can create peace, use creativity to bring peace in everything around us, and it might also require a lot of patience, imagination, acceptance to bring in new ideas in a way. And it would take a period of time, I feel, layering those meanings to those creative expressions, right? What do you think about this?
Recall and read sometime. Of course, it is quite a voluminous novel. That is Tolstoy's War and Peace. There is a very important statistic which has been quoted in a book after, of course, quite a systematic research. In the last 3,500 years, it seems, there is 1 year of peace for every 13 years of war. War has been predominant, conflict of one or the other kind, war in one place or the other, not necessarily in one place, but generally across globe. Peace has been a rare phenomenon. So 1 year of peace for 13 years of war. So it appears quite depressing on the face of it, undoubtedly. But the author also hints that there is also a reason to be optimistic, in the sense, yes, there is at least 1 year of peace for every 13 years of war. Point number one. And secondly, in spite of, let's say, 13 years of war, or rather, in the war dominated world of thousands of years, human civilization has survived, and yes, experimenting with peace as well, not just with war, so as to make this world better. So it is not mere theorizing, but primarily, so how can peace finally manifest not just within but in the world at large? And theorists have developed this whole notion of peace pyramid, which has many layers of peace. So to have absolute peace, which is a distant dream, there should also be certain kind of structural adjustments, structural changes, social changes. So the whole peace pyramid has this corporate peace, uh, then socio-economic peace as a layer, then inner peace, and then the world peace, which also includes all kinds of peace. So violence against nature should stop. Violence against women and all others should stop. So it's a whole notion of peace pyramid. So it is not just defined in terms of individual inner peace, and not even as merely absence of war in case of international relations. So unless we have socio-economic inequalities completely removed, probably world peace is not possible. World peace also depends on certain kind of socio-economic justice which will prevail, which needs to prevail in all countries and continents. Because we also know many of our quote unquote law and order problems are essentially our socio-economic problems. What is the root of what we generally legally considered as crime or certain kind of social evil? So the basis could be socio-economic disparity, which can lead to violence, which can lead to crime, conflict, wars for that matter. So we need to look at peace in its entirety. We need to take a look at all its dimensions. Then, of course, inner peace also becomes possible. The researcher primarily don't want us to be pessimistic. He also says that our effort to achieve peace should go on, and at least there has been 1 year of peace in or after 13 years of war, or in this time span. So effort is to rather enhance the time span of peace and reduce the time span of war. So that effort should go on at different levels. It is not just at the individual level. Sitting at home doing yoga, that is fine. One needs to have certain internal peace. So that is certainly the first priority. But one shouldn't stop. Peace needs to be explored in every walk of life. In social sphere, in economic sphere, in gender, environment, in all these spheres, we need to explore peace in the sense that we should try to eliminate conflict and violence. In that sense, at one point, I've also argued that ecosophy and peace are interchangeable. They are synonyms, because in ecosophy also you primarily seek certain connectivity with the whole world. Rather, we may also derive philosophy of peace from different philosophies. So all philosophies may be interpreted in terms of peace, not in terms of conflict. So if one interprets the whole notion of Brahman in Upanishadic philosophy, that is ecosophical, so that is something which recognizes the same spirit in every living and even non-living being. So in such case, there cannot be any discrimination based on caste, class, gender, and nationality. So if the same spirit, and all religions in that sense also recognize this, there could be certain philosophical differences among them, but they do recognize the same spirit residing in all beings, non-beings. So in such case, we need to interpret different philosophies in terms of peace, ecosophy, media, and aesthetics also can make our life more exciting.
I want to actually
Yeah,
ask you, so throughout Indian history, from the Bhakti movement and the Sufi movements to Gandhi's use of devotional music and symbolic art,
yeah,
which has kind of united people and fostered peace. Why do you think art holds this power, and how can we use it in today's modern
yeah,
world?
yeah. Actually, possibly every country has this kind of institution. In India, we have this Indian Council for Cultural Relations, which is trying to make use of art for peace. Ideally, it needs to make use of art for peace. Taking different Indian cultural artistic forms such as music, dance, let's say theater, films, to different parts of the world. So that's its basic function. Taking our artists and arts to different parts of the world, to different countries and continents, with a message of harmony, international peace. And as I explained earlier, art has this potential of humanizing us. Art has this inbuilt ability to rather give expression to our deeper emotions of peace and harmony. It cuts across different barriers, and many also have argued that art needs to become the new religion, rather leaving behind all other old religions, of course, with due respect to all of them. Art can become a new religion, in the sense, new philosophy of life, because you can also notice Indian songs, Indian film songs could be popular in different parts of the world, be it in Pakistan, be it in the Gulf region, or be it in other parts of the world. Indian music, Indian dance, Indian theater, artists could be popular in different parts of the world. So artists in that sense can connect. Artists can connect. As I said, there is something inbuilt in the art. There could be exceptions, but something that makes us yearn and crave for peace, harmony. Indian writers, Indian painters, Indian musicians can sit with other musicians, their counterparts from other parts of the world, and discuss world peace, which we develop as some kind of art for peace. So I recall a seminar which happened some time ago, attended by the writers of both India and Pakistan, who later brought out a collection of short stories by both the authors, by authors of both the countries, by India and Pakistan. And our own Kendra Sahitya Academy published it. I have that book with me. Short stories from both India and Pakistan. When you read these short stories, you can also make out that human problems are the same across the world, certainly both in India and Pakistan. The kind of yearnings we have, the kind of aspirations we have, the kind of challenges we have, human aspirations, human challenges, human emotions, the pains and pleasures of everyday life, they are same across countries and continents, and hence art can connect. And hence, so there is another way. So you take different art forms, different arts and artists to different parts of the world. Let artists from different parts of the world come to India, and let Indian artists go to different parts of the world, spreading the message of peace, harmony, ecosophy. Art can connect.
It's a universal
It
language.
is the universal language.
I was just wondering, sir, when you say having cultural exchanges and art exchanges, are there any lessons from other cultures or any global moments where art and creativity has fostered peace?
Peace itself is a global movement, and many peace activists certainly make use of art as a medium for peace. Every peace movement, I'm sure, makes use of art as a medium. You look at the immediate past, let's say freedom movement. Different art forms could be literature, music, all these have played their role in communicating the message of freedom. And in contemporary world, ecological movement, I would certainly consider it as a major component of peace movement itself. It is the peace movement in itself. It is also widely used different forms of arts, songs, writings, journalism. Take, for instance, the Narmada Bachao Andolan itself. It has also made use of all modern mass media. There have been many films made on different movements, so also on Narmada Bachao Andolan. So every movement, for that matter, has made use of art as its medium. Today, we ourselves organized a major program on art and peace, which is also available on YouTube, so you may watch sometime. And this was in association with the World Women's Forum, and we are also associated with UNESCO Peace Chair. At one point, in fact, anti-nuclear movement was very, very predominant. Unfortunately, we are not talking so much about disarmament, denuclearization, etc. So at one point, these were the buzzwords. So today, the trend is towards accumulating more and more arms and ammunitions. But parallelly, one also needs to think, how can we make this world arms free? It could be a utopian dream at this point of time, but it needs that dream, at least the dream needs to be kept alive. I can clearly recall some of these major art movements mm, like surrealism, Fauvism, Dadaism. Many of these major modern movements were clearly anti-war. All these modern movements were also witnessing the world wars and were also responding to their contemporary times, and they were clearly anti-war. So how art could be a medium for peace? You take this popular film, that is Bajrangi Bhaijaan, spreads this message of peace in a most creative way. Uh, So such imagination is possible. Such imagination of peace between India and Pakistan is possible, at least in artistic imagination. And hence I said that dream needs to be kept alive, and artists can do that. So that may be realized one or the other day. That is the hope. And one needs to live with that hope. One needs to be aware of contemporary realities, but one cannot afford to lose that hope and the dream. Artists can keep that dream alive.
What you're discussing also brings to me that formal education, until and unless at a higher level where you choose to go into arts as the subject, at school level, children are not really taught to appreciate art. It is either based very much based on you either are talented enough to draw or sing or dance, or you're not. And if you're not, you just disassociate with it. You just become a science person or a maths person, and then from other popular forms of art you just disassociate. Somewhere I think the appreciation of art is something that is missing from basic education. What can you say about that?
Yeah, my one immediate response would be all parents need to be shown Tare Zameen Par. The film Tare Zameen Par. I don't know whether you have seen that film. Of course, I understand parents because the pressures of our times are such that they are forced to rather shape their children as very competitive so that they also survive this compete and survive in this world. It's a very ruthless competitive world today. That is understandable, but we shouldn't take it to its very extreme stage. It is true that children need to be taught certain skills. At the same time, they also learn how to live in this world. Of course, we always dream that the world should be changed. So the famous remark, so all philosophers have tried to interpret the world, but the point is to change it. All philosophers have tried to interpret the world, but the point is to change it. But we do not know when that happens. Yes, at this point of time, children need to be taught how they can live in this world. But at the same time, finer aspects of life shouldn't be ignored. So it's true that artistic talents need to be honed, and in our education it should be inbuilt, and slowly the trend also need to change. All these artistic talents will also rather have certain kind of acceptance by the society at large. I would always argue that the corporate sector should appoint all these artists as permanent employees in their organization so that artists can perform, artists can also add certain aesthetic value to the corporate sector, so that jobs are also created for artists, for singers, dancers, for painters, for writers. So jobs are also created for them. Then, of course, our parents will also wake up, and at the same time, art will also achieve certain kind of recognition by the education system at large. So our education is, of course, they do that arts are important, children need to be taught, but that becomes extracurricular. So that doesn't become part of the curriculum, unfortunately, but it should become part of our curriculum, whatever one is interested in. And we also need to make certain structural changes so that artists also have the opportunity to lead a decent life. All the artists, of course, a few exceptional artists may be leading a better life than everybody else, but every artist, there should be an environment. We should create such a social environment in which all artists are also able to lead a decent life. And hence, I said corporate sector should not treat this as some kind of non-performing asset, but a performing asset. Performing artists are the performing assets of any organization for that matter. Shouldn't look at them from financial profit point of view, but these are invaluable. Music is invaluable, dance is invaluable, painting is invaluable, literature is invaluable, visual arts, theater. So we can't really measure these arts in terms of money. We can't measure artists in terms of artists and artists in terms of money. They are extremely valuable. They are as valuable as doctors, engineers, economists, businessmen, and women. They are as important as anybody else. So that needs to become our attitude. And as I said, decent jobs need to be created for all these artists. Then trend will change.
That is a kind of prevalent in a lot of cultures also. And I believe ancient India was also celebrating traditional art forms, right? And a couple of years back, I visited Paris. And in Paris, what I loved the most is everything. Just a walk on the street feels like you are amidst art, just wall paintings, singers on the street. It's constantly you are met with creativity and art, and it makes you stop, it makes you listen, think about ideas, sometimes even about protests that are happening in that particular culture, but it is all through art forms. And I think India was also very popular with this kind of traditional art forms,
Mhm.
be it folk music, street plays, theater, dance, storytelling, that has kind of brought in harmony and a social understanding to general public.
Actually, for disruption of peace, there are many reasons. Socio-economic reasons are probably primary reasons, and of course there could be psychological reasons, and we do say, which UNO also I think has mentioned in its manifesto. Wars are primarily born in the minds of human beings, and I think a writer has mentioned this, because wars, conflict, violence, all these are primarily born in human mind. We also need to uh, build the bridges of peace in human mind. So it is exploring certain psychological phenomenon. So war, but our mind, of course, is also shaped by socio-economic circumstances, and hence socio-economic inequalities do play a role in shaping our mind as well. That is also true. At the same time, there are so many human realities, emotional faults, rather. Greed, for instance, over ambition, which of course Shakespeare has analyzed in his plays. Ambition, greed. So these are also at the root of many conflicts. So when we try to achieve peace, we will have to address this kind of disparity at the psychological level as well as social level. So one is not without the other. So both exist simultaneously. They coexist. The psychological factors and social factors, they coexist. Yes, as you said, education is one instrument. Education is one medium with which you may try to rather effect a social transformation. But education itself is a product of our socio-economic circumstances. So the kind of education we have today was not there probably 50 years back or 100 years back. So education itself is a product or an offshoot of our socio-economic political circumstances. So whenever political establishment changes, it also tries to rather impose its own political agenda on the education system. That also happens. So that is another. But still, those who are engaged in this serious endeavor of education uh, can make an effort making use of curriculum, making use of one's, may try to, or rather at least touch a few human lives to make a change. But a point which I also intend to mention, we have this trend developing in India also, that is having humanities in technical institutes as well. So generally what happens, we learn all these basic arts as at least some kind of informal education at our school level. So painting, drawing, singing, dance, theater, even though considered as some kind of extracurricular activities, if
Yeah.
not as curricular activities, we do learn. But when we reach plus two, everything changes. So we are constantly pressurized that we shouldn't divert our attention to anything else. We shouldn't sing, we shouldn't dance, we shouldn't paint. So these are all and not economic activities in that sense. So we should just focus on our studies. Science and engineering and medicine are the two major options. Parents' concerns are understandable in this ruthless competitive world, but education is need to certainly think about it. And the trend I was mentioning is to introduce liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences in technical institutes, specifically, let's say, in engineering colleges. So you need not have to give up once you intend to become an engineer. Doesn't mean that you need to give up other arts. You may be interested in music, dance. So you may learn science, commerce, technical disciplines. You may learn civil engineering or mechanical engineering, computer science, whatever. But at the same time, you can also sing, you can also dance, you can also be in theater, you can make films. And nowadays, at least a few engineering colleges, few technical institutes, so they do this seriously. They've also made different arts as part of their curriculum, at least as an optional subject. Those who are learning engineering can also study music or dance or film literature as a subject, so that that interest is also kept alive. So I would also argue that all institutes should do it. Medical colleges should do it. Engineering colleges should do it. So arts need to be kept alive in otherwise considered to be technical institutes, health science institutes, commerce institutes. It should be done in a big way. Then education can make a difference. And the kind of concern you expressed, Roshni, so that may be addressed. So art, after a certain level, even at that level, it is just kind of a side activity at our school level. But
I was also thinking, like, when you mentioned that this kind of a formal education setup has only come in the last 100 years or so, right? And we are focusing more and more on that, and somewhere from the social context also. Like, I remember my grandparents or my parents talking a lot about, since my parents come from Kerala, they used to talk about in the temples, festivals and all, late at night they would have these kathakali performances, which was storytelling, and they used to wake up all night to watch a performance, and this was very integral to the
culture.
social life, right? The community building, which is a very integral part again of peace. If you look at it, we are not just focusing on us, we are coming together, we're listening to stories of other people, other cultures. How can this be brought back, in a sense, into the social structure, the traditional art?
Yeah, if I can recall uh, a kind of a regional phenomenon, you mentioned Kathakali. So I mentioned Yakshagana, which is very rich in this part of the world. Yakshagana today has rather received some kind of a new impetus in this region, and you find plenty of performances and plenty of Yakshagana enthusiasts. So, in that sense, it's a very, I must say, it's a phenomenon which brings back certain kind of optimism. So, we need to look at different art forms in different, let's say, parts of the world, and certainly in that part that is closer to us, and see what exactly is ailing these art forms. What is really the reason? If the art is flourishing like Yakshagana, and one can draw lessons and then certainly pass it on to other art forms which are not flourishing, for that matter. So I think we need to get into deeper studies and make an effort to revive certain art forms. They may not be in the same form, so they may be in different forms, but the essence may be retained. Essence may be retained. Overall, our times are such where certain paradigm shift has happened. Paradigm shift in the sense shift from finer aspects of life to certain very grotesque values, very crude values. So there has been a shift in our values themselves. So we need to study, and it is once again uh, a perpetual effort. Kant, philosopher Immanuel Kant, has a long essay on perpetual peace. We need to struggle, and especially when it comes to many of these traditional art forms which are vanishing, languages, art forms are vanishing. We need to take a closer look, and there are certain success stories as well, as I mentioned, Yakshagana, for instance, and we need to see what could be done with regard to the vanishing art forms.
So, if you were to advise current generations or an young artist, what would the most powerful way to retain this art forms and use that creativity to inspire peace?
Finally, it is everyone's responsibility. Yes, all of us know that the system at large, the world at large, is an inhuman world, an unjust world. There are, of course, socio-economic disparities. Of course, world is rather afflicted by violence. We do aspire for fundamental socio-structural reforms which need to take place in the world at large. But it is a distant dream. At my individual level, what can I do? So that needs to be the beginning of our what can I do? As an individual, what can I do? What can I contribute? As I mentioned, once again, I would bring back this whole philosophy of Sarvodaya, of which I would consider ecosophy, aesthetics, and peace are the major components. In what way can I contribute to the cause of Sarvodaya, of ecosophy, of aesthetics, peace? Then, of course, one probably will have to reform one's own life. We do speak about many of these possible steps, such as reuse, recycle, renew, renovate. So these are seemingly innocuous phrases, but all of us can make an effort to do it. So we may certainly make an effort to bring down our own carbon footprint, the way we consume resources. So the kind of change I intend to see in the world needs to begin with oneself, with myself. So in what way I do not contribute more to the consumption of resources? With regard to peace, once again, to what extent am I responsible for disturbance at large, disturbance outside and within? So let me take a closer look at myself and see. And what can I do for peace within and peace outside? One needs to think. In fact, these are all complex questions and one needs to examine. So at times it may so happen that we may tend to think that we know everything unconsciously, unwittingly. We may be committing injustice, violence against others. I just recall a very interesting episode with regard to gender, because in case of gender, many times we tend to think that we know everything, but we do not know many things. So still we could be the reasons for injustice and violence. Violence. So we have a very important author, as I mentioned, different kinds of peace, environmental peace, gender peace, socio-economic peace. Then, of course, aesthetics, creativity, which you mentioned. So creativity could certainly be in any walk of life, but at the same time, there could be different, what we today broadly call as artistic expressions. They could certainly serve as certain expressions of individual emotions which bring certain kind of balance within, harmony within, peace within. That is the purpose. But at the same time, we can also think how all these art forms may be used for communicating messages of peace, harmony, ecosophy. So if you are an artist, you can always think how I can make use of my art to serve the broader cause. Apart from making it my individual expression, how can I also make use of my painting to be a medium for spreading the message of peace, ecosophy, rather peaceful ecosophy, ecosophical peace. So I would use them as absolutely interchangeable.
So, what you talked about is also a place where the Gandhian philosophy and ecosophy are kind of intersecting in promoting nonviolence or making peace. What about revolutionary or protest art? Can they also be peaceful or messengers of peace?
Yeah, so long as means are peaceful. So that is my view, and I endorse Gandhian non-violence. And I also believe that our means of social transformation, our means of socio-political transformation need to be non-violent. But even Gandhiji did not keep quiet. It was resistance, it was freedom struggle. So non-violence doesn't mean inactivity. Non-violence could be resistance, could be protest. So protest art in that sense could be non-violent. It need not be violent. So long as all our artistic expressions also believe in certain kind of non-violent transformation, they are certainly acceptable to me. Violence as a means of social change, we need to debate. But when I say that non-violence needs to be the means of social political transformation, I do not rule out the inescapability of violence at certain point of time as exceptions, especially as a form of self-defense, which Gandhiji also has not ruled out. So between cowardice and violence, if finally that is the choice before us, if the choice is between cowardice and violence, then possibly violence becomes the choice, not cowardice. And this is what Mahatma Gandhi also has mentioned. So there could be certain exceptional circumstances when violence becomes inevitable, but violence cannot be. Violence cannot be the embraced philosophy of socio-political transformation, and I do not have faith in it. So I do not endorse violence as a conscious means of socio-economic transformation. But we will have to get into a very clinical, philosophical analysis of what violence is, what non-violence is, and all that. But I do not believe violence as a means of socio-political transformation.
Sometimes some artistic expressions can be unintentionally creating conflict. So, how do we navigate such challenges?
Yeah. So we also need to get into a clinical, psychological, philosophical, political analysis of the notion of peace itself. Peace is not passiveness. Peace is not inactivity. Peace is justice. Peace is certain harmony which emerges from justice that prevails within and the outside, in the outside world. So, disturbance could be a part of this process. As we experience all kinds of emotion when we watch a film or a theatrical performance, certain kind of resolution of such emotions happens within. So Shantarasa doesn't mean that we should be always be inactive. So that activity finally resulting in certain kind of resolution. So also certain disturbance is inevitable in socio-political transformation. So also artworks possibly may create certain resentment in society. That is quite likely. But if we are being affected by certain artwork, we also need to think what exactly is the reason. Whether the artwork is saying truth, is it something I need to examine myself? If the art is commenting on, let's say, socio-economic inequality, if it is a comment on the wealthier sections of society, the more fortunate need to think, what exactly could be the reason of this cartoon or this painting or this photograph? So is there something that I need to change myself? So that needs to be our approach. Secondly, if there is any conscious misrepresentation, then yes, something that needs to be avoided. Artists also need to be aware. Uh, so if there is a very conscious effort to offend somebody, I think artists also need to look into themselves whether they are doing the right thing. So that should happen. But there could be cases in which artists may be communicating certain ideas unintentionally without really meaning any offense to anyone. In such case also, of course, society at large needs to look at itself whether it is understanding something in its right spirit. But if there is any effort by certain pressure groups, those who may have certain vested interest, to misinterpret an artistic message, I think that needs to be treated as some kind of a law and order issue, and also much more than law and order issue in many cases, in the sense it could be that there could be a political reason uh, to misinterpret certain artistic work. In such case, the well-meaning people need to deal with such tendencies in the way they need to be dealt with.
Which brings me to the point that, art can actually help us question our own values and choices that can lead to inner peace or social harmony. And that is something even the artists who are creating that art also need to question with themselves. In modern times, this is something that is very prevalent with the form of stand up comedy that has come up as a popular art form these days. And we see that it is also a medium where there's a direct relation with the audience and a place to question our values and choices.
Parameters are the same, as I mentioned earlier. Artists also need to examine, undoubtedly. Society also needs to examine itself. Whether it needs to be offended, it could be a simple joke. It also depends on our sense of humor. So, possibly the best sense of humor, the best jokes, they say, are the jokes which we cut on ourselves. So, they are the best jokes. We also need to laugh with others in an ideal state, not laugh at others. We should also laugh with others and not laugh at others. But in a democracy, we also need to learn to accept criticism, and we also need to examine whether such criticisms are really true. Once again, the same parameters which I mentioned earlier. So both sides need to examine themselves. The artists, be it stand-up comedians or poets or the writers, they also need to examine whether we are into rather healthy practice of art. At the same time, a society also needs to examine whether we have become too touchy, whether we have lost our sense of humor, whether those criticisms are valid criticisms or not. Debate should go on, discussion should go on in a democracy. and what exactly is the best sense of humor. So one may discuss, debate.
Do you see art as a form of dialogue between people in conflict? Like, would that help convey or understand one another without use of words or actions?
Art can bridge hearts, it can bridge human beings. So one may not immediately notice its use when the actual war is taking place, but artists can constantly write about it, talk about it, can create their artworks, rather bringing out all the perils of war, perils of conflict, which can also influence those who have engaged themselves in this phenomenon called conflict and war. So that can happen. I can also recall Vietnam War, for that matter. Vietnam War, which went on for many, many years, finally was stopped primarily because of public pressure. Public pressure, of course, included everyone. It included artists, writers, common public. So, public at large do not want war, conflict. Primarily, they need peace. So, who wants a war affected area to be our habitat? So, we want peaceful routine. Public at large are peace loving people. Many of the vested interests finally push countries into war. Not even the soldiers. And there is a famous poem in which two dead soldiers meet and talk about the futility of war. Two soldiers belonging to two different sides, enemies, let's say, on the war front. After deaths, they meet and discuss the futility of war. So we have this famous film by Ingmar Bergman, Seventh Seal, which is set in the time span of the Crusades, the religious wars of the medieval times, which once again discusses the futility of war. Death appears as a character in the film. So on partition violence, we have best of literature, both sides, different religious communities. So as I mentioned in the beginning, artistic temperament has this innate ability, unless we very consciously destroy it. It has this innate ability which aspires for certain kind of justice, peace, harmony, etc. So it can certainly build bridges, it can build piece with it, whatever instrument it makes use of. It could be a brush, it could be a pen, it could be a computer, it could be a graphic art, it could be the body. So many of these contemporary artists, contemporary dancers have used their dance to spread the message of peace, to spread the message of climate change. So that can
Looking back at your journey, what is that one lesson about art, nature, and peace that you wish everyone can experience, and how each of us can become that weaver of peace in very small, meaningful ways on a day-to-day basis?
as I mentioned earlier, be the change you intend to see in the world. In terms of ecosophy, aesthetics, and peace, which I have described as air, water, and sunshine. In our own way, we will also try to reform our own life, the way we live. Let's not contribute more to global warming. Let's also consume less. Then we will also not create more conflict outside, and we will try to have a peaceful coexistence with society at large. And let's also get into one or the other art form, something that we like. So I'm sure everyone is capable and everyone is inclined to one or the other artistic expression. It could be even Bhakti Sangeet for that matter. So let's all get into one or the other art form that can certainly bring us peace. At the same time, that could also be a medium for peace. If at all there was one art form in which Gandhiji was quite interested, that was music. And hence, we also have many of his favorite songs. Ishwar Allah Tero Na, that is Gandhian change that was brought about. That's how we bring peace through art. Picking up one or the other art form, making it a medium of individual peace as well as social, global peace of every kind. All of us can start singing, dancing, painting, writing poems. At least we can start appreciating different art forms.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable time and sharing your wisdom with us today. Your reflections on art, creativity, and ecosophy remind us how peace can be cultivated both within ourselves and in the world we shape together.
Let me also thank you. It's a very valuable endeavor what you have been doing over months, because you are keeping this dream alive, a dream of Sarvodaya, well-being of everyone. Certainly, that can have its far-reaching consequences in the days to come. And it was my pleasure to be part of your valuable, very valuable endeavor. Thank you, both Roshni and Yashasvi.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I think this is our contribution. In a way, our podcast is our art to put out there to the world, to believe in the philosophy that we are all connected in more ways than we actually know. And to our listeners, I want to say that we want to remind you that these are not just conversations, but invitations for us to look deeper into our own mind. And if transformation is what you seek, the journey always begins within. As we close, we invite you to reflect. When you hear the word peace, what feeling arises in you, and how might creativity nurture it? How can noticing your bond with nature guide you towards living more peacefully? And what simple creative acts could you try today to connect more deeply with yourself, with others, and with the earth? Thank you for joining us on this journey. May your days be filled with creativity, reflection, and the spirit of peace. Stay connected, stay curious.